Hello, this live stream is in response to videos done by Judge Napolitano and his intelligence community sources, foreign and domestic. And in particular, there was a video, one of his recent videos is with Alistair Crook. Alistair Crook is I believe he's an English intelligence or foreign, he's in the foreign intelligence community. Now, this is where and how our names, A through Z, as the species volume science, as an individual body, a volume of individuals. See, that has to do with relativity. But we've had theory. We have the nature of the debate used to measure and maintain, left out the answers to our questions, and left out the scientific value, functional by a breaching method. Why and how, other than the breaching method, is blamed. Where and how our founders communicated for us to blame a breaching method. What caused the North and the South to fight against slavery while they were still enslaved themselves was to make them fight against slavery. Now that means to make them use how and why black pupils and whites of eyes were assigned to mean other than they do. And that's inseparable from all things. Additional now. And that was sustained to exploit it, deny it other locations. So they measure and maintain the Republicans and the Democrats and the exceptions. Distinctly, this deciphered understood with the North and South. They were counter-extorted by our founders to become a side, at least to become. Otherwise, it had no means. It would have been even worse. So this breaching method used. It propagated natures of criminal insidiousness, natures of positives, as collusions with overt and insidious negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, acts like predicate acts, natures like wrongdoing. And so in criminal enterprises, private ones, criminal insidiousness nature itself, but also hypercriminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness. In that / part, the breaching method maintains and effectively maintained self-value. Everyone individually grouped in together, blaming other things, others, and or selves, where and how both nature distinctly, but non-distinctly too, and our founders distinctly from nature, but also non-distinctly from nature. They communicate that the breaching method, they show us the scientific value of a breaching method, just like nature shows us the scientific value and needs to appreciate the scientific value, because it's more than that value, just as it's of how there is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature. That is not our species body of volume. It is not the other bodies of species bodies of volume. That is why and how we have two eyes. Those quality aspects in nature, just like the birds have two eyes, distinctly but non-distinctly, simultaneously, but also further hyper simultaneously. It is value to other things as other identities of relativity / hyper relativity. English was revealed to teach this. And so regardless which is used, or if used at all, for example, a present participle and a past participle, these are grouped values. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Where Difference is about grouped locations, areas, ages, sexes, locations of the species volume, science. Again, now these have been tactically ulterior from this one that therefore is hypernative pure. We could ignore that system and be systems other. See, the beginning of this, we have not legitimate sanity, speaking with the nature of debate on things, box things. The branch of government, the police departments attach little kids to fake conversations with themselves, fake transcripts. Some ways it's themselves, some ways it's the overt criminal enterprises and private ones juxtaposed with their family members, the ones of the intelligence community, which is the three branches of government, exceptions, exception nature tied to them. For example, Connecticut has on off the state of Connecticut corrections offices. It's on the edge of Wethersfield and Hartford. And this is relative as the last of the 13 spots where George Washington, with James Madison's plan, had to counter extort rolls with the breaching method that everyone had, but Peak rolls with it. And had to counter extort them only for a short time because those crazy breachings, torture, extortion, slavery method, fact nature, slavery method laws, North and South, the suits and ties, the counters and exceptions stayed and stay collusion. The reason it was black white, the reason we haven't put together how black and white legal identities and collusion's use is exactly what, in other words, a whole bunch of other different cultures. White people were enslaved and things like that. Look, Jewish people, that's, no, and Native Americans. If I had a tan, in other words, I'm pale because I have a tan, but a lot of Native Americans white more white than me. In other words, and nature showing us the increasing value of Native Americans, but also because nature showing us the increasing value of the difference of being not who's who, what, except for relative to how what's hypernative. What's the voice for that species science? That's what nature's using to answer our questions. That's what nature's using to show us it is our questions. Nature is a word for identity, the same reason and way we need more than one word for a verb. So we need these phrases. A participle. We need to refer to it as a participle also. And then they have a group. Participles have a grouped identity. And look at all these different present participle. All these different dictionaries will have, they say commonly, present participle is always formed by adding ing to a verb. The ing ending to a verb. In the past participle, it could sometimes you could make a past participle. I had been running with an ing. It's variably ing, but the present participle is constantly, and this is more so. See, the ancients understood about what is the value of what is constant or variable relative to appreciation of the scientific discernment, scientific / hyper scientific discernment of the identity of the hyper simultaneous, how it is hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible, and how there are three distinct identities of invisible but still discernible, and there are three distinct identities of hyper invisible but still discernible. And this is what we are Excuse me. For example, this is why and how the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall slash S. Also with appreciation of gases in their mixture. Also with appreciation of water in their mixture and its elements coming through cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, coming from that. So we are in and as a semi-ancient trap with self-valued identities of roles, with each age of uses of descriptions of things, where this breaching method employed through our own sense and sensibilities, you to use Jane Austen's phrase. And there's breaching method too, simultaneously understood how the ancients did too. We are hyper additionally voicings, not as the earth, but anyway, because of where how every individual, every group difference as an individual. As individuals, plural, of any group, even if you make something up, there are 1/3/ as slash the hyper possession. That is the identity of the hyper simultaneous, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously only increasing equally. And with the value of truth before the smallest finite detail now, the value of what came first, for how it communicates to us, and did, including if the communications already came. We ignored it. It's going to demonstrate that too, in those communications. So we could keep mowing the lawns that were set up before our founders were born, North and South, slavery entrenched, sickly distinctly, to measure and maintain self-value roles, blaming other things, others. Self-value is important because it's playing us as identity, as names, as the nature or as the nature of debate. Criminal insidiousness / hyper-criminal insidiousness. Victim predators / hyper predators. A through Z, when you speak, all whisper creak. Then you have to value where and how originally and still all investigators. They stay a certain nature of collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people's logic A through Z. The names next to all natures of, even body dumping spots next to the schools, increasingly involved with where and how. There were predicate acts with facts method. I'm not even a lawyer. I'm not even police form. I'm not a judge. See, the experts, they left out how functional, because they had the English, the evidence is English was revealed to teach this. In other words, the republic for which we stand came before natures of criminally foreign influence, fact, tribute nature, quality aspects in nature as criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness per nature, as we could discern. As we could discern, they have grouped things like criminal enterprises wrong as collusions with whole predicate acts with facts methods against the people of Hartford, Connecticut, for example, sickly distinctly against the people from New York City. Now, Hartford is a suburban / urban city with Mark Twain and with Harriet Beecher Stowe also having been victims / hyper victim of the breaching method that were used as tools by the hyper sophistication, use tools remotely to blame on other things others, or selves. The real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. The suburbs were designed tactically to nature, but on the edge of it as a landscape theater was being sustained against. The suburbs were designed before our founders were even born, and then when they were born, they had to hide their roles with the Constitutional Convention. All exceptions, they had to lie coming up to it. What was their motivation? They left off for us to get the Constitution unabridged, defended that, and how we have innumerable rights. We should not be forced to entertain natures of debate regarding what amendment says what. When we caught them dead cold to rights, the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of the logic of A through Z. For example, the value of voting. The only way they got away with this is rules of wire crime acts and methods. Forcing, like, we know there's a quality of fact should be nature at interbranch locations that does not care if they make things up. They as collusion, increasingly with crime scenes, increasingly all kinds of bad, evil things. And natures have to do with the behavior racketeering, worse than war crimes. And the difference between the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, insidiousness A through Z, before our founders were born, or the branches of government. See, this method kept and keeps them. Not everyone, not wanting to, but increasingly exceptions are made for them. Collusions against themselves, right? Where it appears that they're self-valuing that for other reasons too, so they could get away with it. Because this breaching method propagated definitions and uses of them, descriptions of the human value / value progression. They don't refer to it that way. I'm referring to it that way because everything is its volume. It is possession of any subject one could perceive properly, true, individually grouped and all together, what someone could experience or know intuitively. In other words, it is also the identity that is coming in active, and its identity of relationship to itself as volume. Where and how this is about hyper-additional nature. This is about the identity that is greater than and more finite than, and is active relativity, distinctly from math. How it appreciates, and it is all about relativity. Everything is all about relativity / hyper-relativity, and simultaneously the opposite sequence / simultaneous nature. It is again functional. How reason appreciates. How it is one identity, for example, we could discern, not just as the parts of a tomato plant and or of the inner finite parts of itself. Cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. Even if we can't discern fully the difference of the cell nucleus when looking at the cell body, we can discern clearly the cell body in the cell wall / S. And we know the gases. They're not just coming in and out. They also, again, its identity relationship to itself is equal as volume, even though it is not volume. But see, we have to appreciate this. So before the World Trade Center attack, I had a conversation and I used the word American exceptionalism, the phrase American exceptionalism on the campus of Central Connecticut State University. And I told about 5 things of difference. I didn't tell him where I got. I learned this from my father. I don't know if he read it, if he made it up. What motion, stability, identity, difference, and being. He used to tell me that one time. I wanted to just get some boxing fights and just like try to get it for money. And he's like, no. First, for years, I didn't box because he just told me the nose goes. If you wanted to box, nose goes. It's like, you know what I mean? Because I just wanted to like do that. In other words, I wanted to try doing. I never told anybody I wanted to do guitar. I didn't realize how I should have tried guitar early, but I'll play for you guys because in other words, I have a evolution science should only feel like game/s. And the answer to these questions was known by the ancients about American exceptionalism, about other countries' exceptionalism is simultaneous. Because where and how everyone, first of all, every country's impositions by this semi-ancient breaching human fact, human nature breaching method, the predicate acts delivery system method / hyper predicate acts delivery system method. Instead of calling it just slavery, we're going to call it hyper predicate acts with facts method. How are you? Do you play the guitar? Joyo, Jayo, but the Joyo is the name of a guitar pedal manufacturing company. I don't know what they do. I believe I know at least they do guitar pedals. But Happy New Year. This is the serious things going on in the world people don't realize because there is so much. Then there's local. There are shootings all the time. There are murders all the time. And so they separate the types of things, and they left and leave out increasingly the value of what came first, because of how this breaching method exploits us as a fact human nature. It has been at each age of fact human nature. This is multi-front at countries A through Z. They are different and they see difference. Where they see difference since semi-ancient times, not just since before our founders were born. Look at how they could transverse the earth, the countries with nuclear weapons. But rather than use that to make off the grid self-standing for everyone, more water, more energy can be created and can be saved by lifting water and then dropping it than it takes to lift it. Why we hunger? Not to be through the systems with the setup with the suburbs. Even the suburbs are tactically denatured before our founders were born. And Hartford is a suburban / urban, where our founders had to leave entrenched, entertained, and uses of their lies forced to be pretended truth, while rules with uses of the nature of debate, criminally foreign influenced. People change what others say when they mention predicate acts. They change it to theories. And they keep the nature of debate regarding relativity. Math is all about relativity. They're assigning identity of value progression and identity of relativity / relativities. And everything's / hyper relativity. Because one identity shares all others. It shows us that and how the birds have 2 eyes. They have quality aspects in nature. They have consciousness. It shows us the bugs, though. There is a shared consciousness. And there are answers. But this method of communications that nature uses has been replaced so long, vaccines. Before they catch the kids in New York City, or the adults even in New York City, for example, because it's even easier to discern. We don't leave out. It's some we value the simultaneous. And see, it has everyone valuing the simultaneous tactical ulterior from how nature does. And it has everyone valuing the finite tactical ulterior from how nature does. So campuses A through Z were sickly distinctly victims, but they were also non-distinctly victims of a human fact treatment nature predicate with facts method that recorded in our faces. It propagated natures and things like methods involved, like for example, motivations involved with using descriptions of the Constitutional Convention in the window. Yes, with where and how. The answer that nature shows us and that our founders told us, like to blame things like slavery on the breaching method. Instead, the lies our founders had to leave the facade of those roles as slaves, to an extent, and everyone with the difference of the Uncle Tom, or for example, Uncle Tom is associated with Mark Twain House and Harriet Beecher Stowe houses. They are together, not far from a lawyer, Robert Chevrolet, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and a bunch of people from Wethersfield involved with criminal enterprises, private ones, and intercities with them, with syntax, with he said, she said. This slacks all identities speaking for the law or not speaking for it. Now, which is everyone. Tactically delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence, factual nature, qualities, aspects of nature. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including if there were a majority of people. So there's things we have to do. And the reason we never do them for our countries is because of an individual or a group starts speaking and thinking as a nature with solutions, for example. Where nature, anyone who's appreciating any physical identity, you have to appreciate how it is functional, the hyper invisible, but still discernible. See, before kids or adults commit real crimes, and when it's mixed in, when there are instances, they're locking collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with the interbranch names, and with the people with the news, and with victims, and with their victims' advocates appointed by courts, and with their doctors and the databases tied to them, the people at location/S. This method made a whole bunch of people through a whole bunch of hyper additional motivations, suits and ties, counters, exceptions, needing to hire persons at other locations, needing to pretend they could speak for integrity, needing to pretend they could answer questions regarding exceptionalism. In other words, nothing personal. Before the World Trade Center attack, see, they lying about what's personal or not. The intelligence community. That's the difference of that as the three branches of government grouped and together. and as intelligence, foreign and domestic mixed. So UConn and Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College, they have roles with a whole bunch of different countries. People that were forced to collusions with the difference of how on the campuses and off the campuses, and the difference of that are collusions with predicate acts with facts. And it's one of the things that connects a whole bunch of different murders and the timing of them, untimely deaths, timing of them, and uses of them, also singularly used by the breaching method, but also with nature's singular demonstration, hyper singular demonstration of this, where and how, when people deny what is actually recorded. Part of the way they're getting away with this is because they're changing what everyone's words are. In other words, the interbranch are switching names and switching sequences while they are for themselves for some certain reason, other people with them are for certain reasons. And there's sort of all the difference of that, they're putting fake things in databases and they're building upon that. These are also on names on off the state corrections offices who have roles also. The intelligence community is also foreign and domestic military, shared here and there. The fire departments have roles with Russian families and with like, for example, with psychiatry. There have been tactically delusions wrought since founding. There have been roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and of precedents and of reality simultaneously, while there are a bunch of different natures of organized crime, acts, and methods. As people speaking about things like crimes, this breaching method made a certain type of victim / hyper victim that would go into a big, the only formal stewards of the sciences, individually grouped and together. In other words, from off those locations. Forgiveness is to discern roles within uses of the breaching method. And the breaching method's discernment requires uses of what is recorded and means to discern it, how the intelligence community, the difference of them, their difference, as that's also, they're blaming out things other themselves, where and how foreign bodies have been involved with the same names since they were kids at each of our campuses. Now, this comes through instances, descriptions. This comes through reality descriptions. As collusion /S, this breaching method interpreted our founders for us. And so we have this. For example, Fox News has narratives. It has nature, involved with the Constitutional Convention and with uses of people who use the most knowledge of good and evil. For example, use a phrase from the Old Testament out of sequence that it asks us to appreciate the Old Testament thought. And past where it says, the Old Testament says, only right up to right here is where people have to know. And this came before the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life and the Adam and Eve and the Cain and Abel and the generation of narratives and nature is described. See, all we were supposed to stay on was what came before that and what came before that. There's one part in the beginning of the Old Testament that says, only right here where the names of the people of the sciences will come together is the part that matters. This is all we have to defend. And the part that came before this. See, but people are using the most knowledge of good and evil of the book. People are using descriptions of their emotions. There's nothing personal against Mr. Crook, who's with the video I put a link to in the information section of this YouTube video. But it mentions emotions. Nature uses emotions, also uses descriptions of emotions to discern, but if by the self or by someone other people, to discern self for self or others. If being left out is how, for example, functional, being itself, the hyper is simultaneous, hyper invisible but still discernible. Is the smallest finite detail, for example, left out, we can discern other than its system as possession of with possession of the description of those emotions. Emotions are only about what is hyper simultaneously, not leaving out the smallest finite detail and or the value of what comes first or what came first. In the breaching method understood this, how reason works. The breaching method measured and maintained roles with criminal insidiousness natures of positives and negatives as collusions with difference, even including who knows who and who doesn't, where instances are treated, for example, regarding the difference of the severity of it. There are people who had roles with criminally foreign influenced commerce, interstates, and body dumping spots, who were kids, who called me on the phone, who I didn't know them. I still don't know them. I try to make fake exceptions that way. I don't believe I ever had a class with a Richard Dombrowski is one of the ones involved with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, private criminal enterprises, and overt criminal enterprises. Names I don't know, body dumping spots, and all along like Two Rod Highway, and I'm and a Hangdog Lane. Are people involved with the Weathersfield police who've been switching and forging names, planting evidences on all sides of my house. Whole bunch of people tied to a Leahy family and foreign and domestic doctors that work with mental health at Hartford Hospital have been attaching little kids and their family members to fake conversations with themselves and with others as collusions with prosecutors and judges personally and professionally, criminally foreign influenced, as timed collusions with co-defendants also of and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, with criminally foreign influence uses of my campuses. Central Connecticut State University had a whole bunch of roles with criminally foreign influenced predicate acts with facts, tricks at the campuses intercities since everyone was kids and before everyone was born. The identities of the branches of government too are juxtaposed with this, and the difference of them and the intelligence. They have a whole bunch of people in forms with like with Middletown, Connecticut, has conjunctions to Central Connecticut State University trained state police forms, investigators, where they have roles with predicate acts with facts methods, this breaching method, where hundreds of nations are shared certain type of whether they agree or not too, that's all. The difference there is also employed by the breaching method. They also employed the human voicings for any group, all the groupings that have been made can't defend their logic and nature with that and afford discern what the founders of each country left us to discern. They left us not to leave out not just criminal foreign influences, but hyper criminal foreign influences also, because these are criminal foreign influences designed to affect responses to keep everyone blaming other things other than themselves. and lying about all that's actually connected to the roles with it. And like, for example, so we could do injunctive reliefs for the systems too by injecting a temporary slash lasting value systems and plans that are hyper transparent, that can be things that the other nature, like the BRICS and that G7 can be, and that could heal and afford to heal tactically denatured ground locations everywhere where the species body has been since semi-ancient times, before modern religions messengers were born. Already the earth, its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that through our human syntax volume sciences, the Republican exception nature, that it valued simultaneously. In other words, some ways, Chinese exception nature, for example, it preserved yin yang and archaeological definitions and discernment of things like culture and difference. They are tactically delusions without defenses, natures of logic, relative to, in other words, each of the sciences individually grouped together. Certain type of victim, neither either with silence or when voicing. And this would have, in other words, is functional to say innocent until proven guilty, even if it appears to be a preponderance of guilt, of evidence of guilt. You're leaving out the value of what came first. You're leaving out the value of how what is communicated is other than what is said. It is communicated that the police form, people involved with the FBI and Weathersfield Police, same families and their sources, foreign and domestic, same time, and other police departments, retired police chiefs involved, all along roads and routes. Then they want to have instances they can't, they're putting fake audio and video transcripts, and they have been doing this through since time. So Hartford Hospital has roles with violence on my street, people involved with poison and guns and overt criminal enterprises from other areas. And they're taking collusions with where and how already investigators, they painted themselves in corners and they hid it by using investigators illegitimately, increasingly. They also hid this by pretending there's legitimacy behind the difference and or uses of the difference of Republican themed and or of Democratic themed intelligence. And this is also relative to where and to how. Discernment of it is capable of being right where people pretend voting is valued. Now, this is also right where the predicate acts with facts. I noted WFSB attached me and others to faith and to change. Some people they attached to change conversations about the World Trade Center attack and about criminal cases they brought up with people they attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves. WTNH attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others too, including doctors. WFSB pretended I had conversations with doctors about the World Trade Center attack that never were at all. Leahy, a whole bunch of people with the name Brendan Leahy, more than one person with the name Brendan Leahy, and women and their family members and their family, and family members of, and neighbors of, a Lombardo family. I never saw them on my street, but they're involved with the names who've been planting predicate acts on my street on all sides of my house with an officer Jerry Miller, with a Kevin Dillon, Anna Dillon. They shouldn't have hid that from the neighbors, what they were involved with since I was a kid. Also, on and off campuses, roles with predicate acts with facts, putting fake things in the databases, including people with Washington D.C. tied to their narratives. They lied to my principal about me, with ones involved with the World Trade Center attack too. Years before that, regarding the where there was a Rodney King. Rodney King. There have been reports of Rodney King, and they showed Rodney King getting hit by the police, and they were bringing up drugs and things. And this is also people that are involved with KKK themed, black themed, on off Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, planting evidences and roles with news companies with the subjects because how the intelligence is next to them and how the sciences A through Z individually grouped it together. They are measured and maintain self-valued uses of their name, used as systems tactical terror from the one that is answering our questions. Simply that we have been prevented to use it though. So we could fund the means. In other words, we could do a military exercise that just explaining it, everyone has the right to make money with it because only the people who want to hear about it. But in other words, we'll take communications and we'll have to deal with the country. Countries A through Z were designed before our founders were born. The suburbs were designed tactically to nature to force value nature systems tactile terror needed self-value, not just food. If you look at how the housing is from like New York, look at any city, look at suburbs, mass reasons, mass farming, we need it now. And the soil is all tactical, there are barely any worms left compared to they used to walk into the puddles all the time in the rain. Now there's not bugs around and stuff for the worms. They have for the birds. They have worms. Why do we hunger? Not to be through these systems where the suburbs were designed before our founders were even born, with slavery entrenched north and south, with those torture laws that would not let the suburbs built any other way. They could have built them nicer, better, before we even had cars. Could have built rather, in other words, they caused negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, and to be collusions with, they also cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures to be as criminal insidiousness natures are positives. Because this preaching method understood what the ancients understood about positive and negative, and how there's a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments. Not per the definitions of criminal insidiousness that have been that black pupils. They have grouped. And if you're grouping criminal enterprises wrong, private ones, while your collusions with predicate acts with facts without breaching methods, we're a hyper criminal enterprise. There are proofs. Even if there's no hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. To counter a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, it is more probably there. And it is more probable and practical, would cause and use as worst the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones and the killers. A whole bunch of people, what is actually recorded into cities. They brought this stuff up. Oh, you brought it up because you got arrested. You guys brought it up. They know how when they put people next to each other, when people get arrested or things like that, it's not legitimate undercover police forms and stuff like that. They say loaded things. You don't answer, they're just gonna put you in fake quotations anyway. Sandy Hook has fire campuses, child campuses. You know how I know they're the fire ones? Because they don't respond. And then everyone's speaking for identity. Americans, black pupils. When did you hear someone speak for that, for the Constitution unabridged? Innumerable rights. They have